Good morning, good Monday morning to you. I'm grateful to be here with each and every one of you. Grateful for the opportunity to show up and be present. It's what I like to call Mindful Monday. It is Monday, September 22nd, 2025, the day before the so called rapture. And boy, oh boy, if my grandmother was alive, she would be probably part of the rapture audience too. Hey, Sherry, it's good to see you today over on Substack. Hey, Francia, it's good to see you on Substack today. Hey, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook family, thanks for being here. Today is a good day to practice mindfulness because there's a lot of things that are happening in the world. And I want to start, as always, I want to start with just a minute of pause. So I am going to start my handy dandy 1 minute timer so that we can start with intention. Uh, and like presence. So if you are on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, you will see the timer. If you are on Substack, you'll just see me kind of ground into the day, the moment, and we'll just spend a moment. Just and while you're in this 1 minute, just kind of try to have a mindful awareness. Try to notice what's happening around you, what's happening in your body. So let me share my screen for those who are watching on other apps. And let's do 1 minute of mindfulness. Doesn't look like that screen is available. Let's just do 1 minute. Doing our best to be visual for those who have some visual issues. Hi, Stephanie. We're going to do a 1 minute mindfulness. And then we're going to get going to trying to be mindful on this Monday. So let's begin. 1 minute of mindfulness. That was a school bell ring. Thank you all for taking that 1 minute. I think sometimes we get on social media and we're looking for answers and solutions. And so I wanted to invite us just to pause for 1 minute before we kind of get into it today. As I jokingly said, today's date was Monday, September 22nd, 2025. And the news on the streets is tomorrow is the rapture. For those of you who are like, what is the rapture? What is all this rapture talk? Most of us, not all of us, may have grown up Christian here in the Americas and went to the church. And there was a season where we talked about revelations, and there's this moment of the rapture. And the rapture was that moment in history when there's like pre tribulation and there's like great suffering coming, and then mid tribulation, we're taken halfway through all the suffering, and then some believers, if you're a believer of Christ, you ascend, like you ascend into heaven, and everyone else gets left behind. And then the post tribulation is those of us who are on earth who are left behind. Um, we do all of this work and we wait for Christ to come and beat the devil, and it's just very interesting. So when I was in my teens and heavy in the church, I actually had this series called Left Behind, and it eventually became a movie. And it was with Kirk Cameron, and it literally, I really drunk the rapture Kool-Aid. Like I was trying to live, so I did not get caught up in the rapture. And I've been sitting here thinking, since this is a Mindful Monday, what if the rapture is just a mindfulness practice? What if the rapture is just a mindfulness practice? What if this so called rapture that's happening tomorrow is actually an invitation for all of us to slow down and just be mindful for a day? because as someone who no longer practices Christianity, I understand how scary it is to, like, when I think about it now, I'm like, were we all just being brainwashed about this event happening? Um, and it's really interesting how when you start learning about other spiritual practices and you start looking at practices like Gnosticism, not agnosticism, but GN, Gnosticism, and you start looking at other versions of the Bible, or you go to seminary school, seminary will blow your mind, because seminary is when they tell you the real, you'll actually start to be like, oh, this is interesting. This is a different way to look at this. And so, as you see more information spread out about the rapture, my invitation is for all of us to see tomorrow as a practice of mindfulness. And maybe it's a day that we don't watch TV. Maybe it's a day that we're more intentional with our time. Because the one thing I would hate is for everyone to be so in fear of a rapture that you're like tapped into CNN all day and waiting to see who got disappeared. And it says in the Bible, no one knows the time or the hour. And so the fact that people have given a date as the day of the rapture, I think there's something else underneath it. And so, everything is energy. Everything is a spell, especially here in America. Words are spells, policies are spells. Everything is a form of magic, whether you agree or disagree. So if you have a group of people believing that tomorrow's the day when Jesus is coming back, and you have them thinking that, and then they wake up and they're like, well, Jesus didn't come back, what do you think is going to happen in the collective? This is why a lot of psychiatrists are like, this is a mass psychosis. You have millions of people in a country believing that they're going to be gone tomorrow. Right? What about people who are in cults? What if there's another Jim Jones incident tomorrow? So that's why tomorrow, which is Tuesday the 23rd, I don't want to watch TV. I don't want to be on social media. I will commit to my lives, but I think I'll be leading more mindfulness awareness practices, because people really think that there's a rapture coming. And my fear is like, what happens when nothing happens? What will those people do? Will they like feel like they're sinners? Like, this is, if you really slow down and think about it, you got people saying the rapture is tomorrow. And then it's like, well, what happens if it doesn't happen? Then what are you going to tell people? Right? And everything is energy. So if all of our energy tomorrow is expected to be taken by Jesus, and those of us who are left behind are sinners, we're in a lot of trouble. This feels like propaganda. It feels like a form of abuse and propaganda. And how do you keep a group of people under control? You give them propaganda and abuse, because a lot of us are waking up to what the truth of reality is, and what the truth of what it really means to live, what it means to be human. And every moment that these systems can tell us that we're not human, and every moment that they can create a new narrative, it just distracts us from the work that we can do. And so just wanted to throw that here off at the top of this Mindful Monday. The invitation today is to really slow down if you can. My invitation to everyone today is to slow down and tend to your needs, because we definitely live in a world where we're not tending to our needs. We are out here doing everything we can to, we're just doing everything we can except tending to our own needs. And it is really okay to have seasons of solitude. And it's really okay to sit in silence, because there is so much overstimulation that's happening. Our brains actually are not functioning the way that they were. Like, our brains literally aren't even made to handle as much that's being thrown at us. And so, first of all, you have it coming from the politics. You have it coming from Washington. Depending on your state, if you're in LA, you have stuff happening in LA or DC, right? And then on top of that, after that, then you have what's happening on social media, the different commentary, that's all these different opinions. And then you have what's happening with you in your personal life and your relationships. And I personally just think it's just a little too much. Like, how do you scale back? So on the 25th, I'm going to be inviting people to do a 7-day social media detox with me. I just have to get some things set up. I have the 30-day group. It was a 7-day group. It emerged into a 30-day group. And the 30-day group, they're doing really, really good questioning, getting curious, getting really super clear on what it is, why they're on social media, what is their intention behind it, and how does it help them on their journey. And so for me, I tend to, since doing social media detoxes and waking up to, propaganda and media and really looking at history of the 1940s, like the history of fascism, the history of Nazi Germany, I actually can see through what's happening. And, that's why, honestly, if I can really keep it real, I stay on these platforms that people are leaving, because who are we leaving behind? Who are going to be the voices to say, hey, what are we doing over here, right? Because it's all just interconnected. It's all just super interconnected. And so my invitation for the next 2 days, if you can, is to just scale back your consumption of media and social media. I know you might have your favorites and you're part of some Patreons, or you have collective communities that you might be participating in. I think that is so beautiful. And I also would love to invite everyone to not buy into tomorrow. Don't feed the flames. Don't buy into the rapture. The only rapture that we should be considering is a mindfulness practice. And really, if you can, and if you this need to be informed, this need to know everything. It's okay to not know anything. It's okay to be a student. It's okay to not be an expert in liberation work. It's okay just to be. And so tomorrow, while we're, again, this idea of the rapture, how can we reframe this? Let's look it up. First of all, let's look at the definition of rapture. A feeling of intense pleasure or joy. The second coming of Christ. So those are the two definitions of rapture. One is a feeling of intense pleasure or joy, and the second is to heaven, transporting the believers to heaven at the second coming of Christ. That is what the rapture's definition is. So I'm going to go with definition number one. When we consider the rapture tomorrow, let's consider finding feelings of intense pleasure and joy. This is literally the first noun definition of rapture in the Oxford Dictionary. So finding feelings of intense pleasure and joy. So that's the only rapture I plan to do tomorrow, is staying off the line, not watching TV, and finding how can I fulfill myself with feelings of pleasure and joy, because I'm worth it, even on this, when the world is falling apart. Yes, there's a lot of grief, but if your grief is not mixed with joy, you could possibly just be flagellating yourself. And you don't want to do that. Like we get enough of that growing up. And this is why I say a lot of this, when I think of anti-racism work as healing work, this is shadow work, this is somatic work, this is inner child healing, this is parts work, because we're scattered. You know what I'm saying? This system has just tore us up, not just by the system, but in our relationships and how we see each other and how we don't see each other. We're just I get on the calls with some of the collective members, and I'm often saying, we're just a bunch of inner children acting out our trauma. Every time I see infighting or arguing, I'm like, ooh, I wonder what happened to that person in childhood. And ooh, what happened to that person? And maybe it's two inner teenagers. A lot of times what we don't realize is that we are fighting to get unmet needs met. And we all have needs. But what we all do is we have these strategies that we use, survival strategies. If I were to keep it real, we're using survival strategies to meet unmet needs, and we're causing harm to each other. And this is why, this is not a one-size solution. But I think that this is why we're not getting deeper in the work, because we're not seeing the shadow aspects. We're not seeing the somatic reclamation. We're not seeing the inner child, inner teenager work. It's just kind of like, oh, there's this problem. Let's just go do something about it. But if you don't go deep and you only just scratch the surface, that's why we're all in the position that we're in. Because 2020 was the invitation to go deep. And a lot of folks did and a lot of folks didn't. And this is not me here to guilt or shame you, but this is me here to remind all of us, like, we all have work to do. And it starts with us looking at our inner child, our inner teenager, getting back into our bodies, disconnecting from so much media online. It all just takes work, right? So today, if you're not busy around 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I do want to invite you to join us for Direct Compassion Communication. It is the practice where you learn how to slow down and self-connect to yourself so you're not causing harm to others. Well, you're always going to cause harm. Let me not say that. But direct compassionate communication is a practice of learning to slow down so you can reduce how harm shows up in your relationships. You will cause harm. Anyone who's saying, oh, you'll never cause harm, harm doesn't exist, you will cause harm. I cause harm every day. And it's not intentional. It's almost like being in a conscious awareness. Now, you can reduce how you cause harm by doing your best to stay in conscious awareness, but it's hard to stay in conscious awareness when we are all part of a system that keeps our minds so busy that we're not slowing down into consciousness or that awareness. So direct compassionate communication gives you 2 hours to slow down and start the practice of building conscious awareness. So just wanted to give that invitation for those who are still watching and maybe looking for a tool or a practice. That website is directcompassionatecommunication.com. Go to the events and you'll see today's practice or Wednesday's practice. All right. So that's what I want to invite you to on Mindful Monday. If you are on Substack, we just dropped our new Substack around how letting go is how we divest from whiteness. And it kind of talks to how, we hold on to control as a form of self-oppression. And the ideology of whiteness. So sometimes we talk about the word whiteness. Sometimes we are like, oh my gosh, I'm such a bad person. It is an ideology. It is a cultural ideology, a system of dominance rooted in colonization, ableism, extraction, and disembodiment. And if you're in the North America, you've been steeped in this culture, whether you want it to be or not. When I think of the ideology of whiteness, I don't think about race. If you were born or immigrated into America, we all uphold the cultural ideology of whiteness. All of us. And so when I talk about this ideology of whiteness, I talk about the process addictive behaviors. There are cultural addictive behaviors that we all hold on to because we connect control to our sense of worthiness, and we don't recognize that, right? And control is the center and the currency of whiteness, because if you control your tone, if you control your body, if you control your emotions, if you control your productivity, if you control your schedule, if you control your spirituality, then you're safe. So then we code switch, we perform professionalism, we apologize for existing, we apologize for resting, we police our own softness, but control isn't care, it's not trust, and it's not liberation. But Black liberation has always taught us how to let go. And letting go is not giving up, it's not bypassing, it's remember who we were before whiteness told us who to be. For white bodies, it's remembering who you were before your culture of people had to assimilate into the American system of whiteness to survive. Whiteness is a cultural ideology and a survival strategy for all of us living in the United States of America. The only way to survive on this bloody stolen land is to assimilate into whiteness and use whiteness as the guide for our whole life. And until we learn how to center Black liberation and pro-Black solidarity, we will keep repeating the same patterns. You know, when I talk about Black liberation or the Black liberation movement, people think it's just resistance. Well, that's the white version of it, because the Black liberation movement was not about resistance. It was about power to and power for the people. It was about, okay, these politics don't want to help us. These politics are forgetting about our people. We'll take care of our people. We'll take care of each other. We'll protect our communities. We'll keep each other safe. It was about Black joy, Black art, Black creativity, Afrofuturism. When you look at the timeline between 1968 and 1974, you can see the Black liberation movement that worked right. It was right there with the Black Power movement. It was right there with the Afrofuturism movement. It was right there with the funk movement. What happened was in 1974, when all of us women got the right to have our own credit cards, they introduced drugs and crack into the Black community, so that movement stopped. Had that movement continued, had the Black liberation movement continued without COINTELPRO and the FBI taking out our Black leaders like Fred Hampton, because now we're going somewhere, we would be in a different place today. The specific destruction of the Black community in the late 60s and 70s, right after they gave us the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, etc. Once they did that, the system had to figure out another way to keep us all bound. And everyone's liberation is tied together. But when you look at history and you look at the moment that Black liberation stopped, there's the answer. History is always the teacher, and we have to remember that. And a lot of people don't understand Black liberation, except you think Black liberation is resistance. Yes, resistance has always been the Black strategy. How do we resist enslavement? How do we resist being treated humane? How do we resist? But also it's not just resistance, it's joy. It's joy, it's resiliency, it's courage, it's community care. We don't practice community care in a culture of whiteness because everyone is supposed to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and figure it out. This is why it's 2025 and we're seeing everything in history repeat itself. Thank you, H. Treebark on Instagram. You also had what happened in Tulsa with Black Wall Street. The thing is if Black liberation is centered on resistance and joy and Afrofuturism, right? And you see a group of Black people thriving, that's a threat. A system of oppression does not want any of us to thrive, let alone Black folk, but we have to start doing the opposite. And that is the work of liberation. It's not erasing Black folks from the story. It's actually looking at where have they been left out? Where have we as Black folk been left out? Where are we upholding whiteness and leaving each other out? We got some deep work to do, y'all. That's why I keep saying that this is healing work. This is shadow work. This is inner child work. This is parts work. Even the notion of parts from an IFS approach, parts work is actually an indigenous practice, because in indigenous Africa and in indigenous Americas, we as indigenous people understand that we are a being of multiple parts and multiple behaviors. You can even say process behaviors are, you could even say a process addiction or a process behavior is a part. You have a control part. You have a codependent part. You have a perfectionist part. All of us have these parts. We just have, we learn to do the work to move through them and move with them. All right. So that's all. That's a lot for me to share with you all today. I do want to give time if anyone has anything that they want to share, any questions, any comments before I go for the day. You can read more about the work of Control on our Substack article today, because it's here, and would love to just hear your thoughts or opinions about today's Substack article. And yeah, anything for today? I appreciate each and every one of you for watching. I hope you took some thoughts down. Don't forget of our Heal Your Way Forward Kickstarter, where we are moving these books. I will be sending an email out to all our weekend donors who gave to get this book, this Heal Your Way Forward. We're getting to some social work programs, people who can't afford it, local communities, local activists. So if you can, check out our link where you can support our Give Butter version of a Kickstarter campaign. Every purchase supports someone on the path of healing forward. Over the weekend, our goal was to move 100. I believe after I total, I believe we got to 60, which is major, and we're going to keep on going. So we got there, we're getting there. every day, 3K in 30 days. So if I do the numbers right, I believe we would have ordered 30. We got 30 last week with last week's donation, 60 this week. There's another company that's getting some. So we're getting there. We're moving this book. We're moving, we're grooving. And thank you for all your support as always. And I'll be live later today with just like an evening checkout. And we are a culture of care and repair. So thank you for being here. And peace and blessings to you all on Instagram, Facebook, and